two-time heart transplant patient, Stephen Taibbi has been told his whole life that he had an expiration date. Though that date kept moving, it was still a constant thought in his mind. Instead of letting that get him down, Stephen chose, as he calls it, an attitude of gratitude, and grabbed life by the horns. He managed to have a good career in the entertainment industry and even learned to fly glider planes. He's married and has lived a full life. He has written a book entitled Grateful Guilt, Living in the Shadow of My Heart, which is his story of struggle and perseverance. His story is amazing and truly inspiring, and in this interview you hear some of it. So please enjoy and consider becoming an organ donor today.
My guest this time is Stephen Taibbi. Stephen is an interesting man. He's a two-time heart transplant recipient. Yeah, I'm fumbling all over my words this morning. Stephen is he has a very positive outlook on life, I think, from all of this. Stephen, how are you?
I'm fine, Odd. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm grateful that you were able to reschedule with me. So, all right, let's jump right in, shall we? So, two-time heart transplant recipient.
Right.
What? I got to start at the beginning. Why? What was wrong with your heart?
Well, for the heart, we have to really go into the very beginning. Okay. On the day I was born, I had my first 3 operations, and they were minor operations, all relating to a birth defect that they knew I had. My thumbs. You see my thumbs. See my thumbs. Mm-hmm. So they didn't understand that was really related to my heart. That was by 1953. So. By the time I was 5, though, I wasn't thriving, and I went to the doctor because my grandfather had to get tested for tuberculosis, and they discovered I had a grossly enlarged heart. And that's never a good thing. And the doctors told my parents, holy cow, we have to operate on this kid right away. I had what they call in the old days, the vernacular was, I had a hole in the heart. And that was a hole between the atrium wall. You have the atrium on top, and there was a hole between the two sides, and blood was slushing in and out, and making my heart not beat well, and it would have been my death knell, literally not long from there. At that time, 50% of the children, because it was all children, it was a birth defect, 50% of the children who had this operation were not making it. So I had a 50-50 chance of living through this operation. When they did the operation, they discovered that I actually had 2 holes in my heart, and I had a vein plumb backwards, and that it was leaking blood into my lungs. They did the first hole repair, but they didn't think I could survive the rest. So they sent me home hoping I'd get stronger. I was fainting and all this stuff around the house for a year. The next year, they brought me back when I was 6. And at that time, the survival rate for 2 hole in the heart operations or 2 ASD repairs, atrial septum defect, was 0. I became the first person in the world to live through 2 open heart surgeries for ASD repair back in 1959. So then they told my parents, well, he made it through that, but he'll never get past 10. I got past 10, as we can all say. I'm well past 10. And
you don't look a day over 11.
I don't feel a day over 12, so it's good. So I mean, think of this. My parents were told that I had less than a year to live when I was 5. And then they're being told that I had maybe a year to live between 5 and 6. And then they were being told that I wouldn't get past 10. I must have been murder for my parents. And then and nobody told me those things, but I knew them intuitively. And I was just like digging in, and I was fighting, and I was just like, no, you're not going to get me. And, when I was going in for my second operation, they gave me last rites. And you don't do that to a Catholic Italian, even at the age of 6, without them knowing what that means. So nobody was telling me anything, but they're giving me last rites, so very subtle. But they like I said, I survived the second operation. He said I wouldn't make it past 10. And then they And then I just did make it past 10. And then when I was 15, closer to 16, somewhere around there, they discovered that my heart was a runaway and it was beating on its own. And my resting heart rate was 172.
Jeez.
And yeah. And my doctor said, this keeps up, your heart will just explode. But this time I had a cardiologist who spoke to me and, he treated me like an equal, which was really part of the reason why I'm still here. And he said to me, you're lucky if you have a year here with this. So towards the end of my 16th year, I went into the hospital and they wanted to see if there was a disease process or something had gone wrong. And they were hoping it was just that the nodule that controls the heart rate was damaged during the second operation. And that was what it was. So they do something they did a cardioversion. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
That's doctor speak. Or we're going to electrocute you.
Oh, fun.
I know. They never really quite say what they're going to do. They always have to make up these big words. So they knock you out. They put a plate on your chest and a plate on your back, and they zap you and they stop your heart. And the thinking is that the heart will regain the rhythm on its own if they let it just rest for a moment.
In other words, it's the equivalent of the IT world saying, turn it off and turn it back on again.
Exactly. They rebooted me. It's literally, they rebooted me. So I think it's where Bill Gates got the idea. So they had told me when they were going to do it, they were saying there's a small chance that you might not start up again. But I had to give them permission anyway. I was 16. They asked me for my permission. I'm certain they didn't need it because I was only 16, but they did ask me, and I did give it. I'm sure my mother gave it too. So that worked. And then they put me on these pills that were called quinidine, which at the time were like the cutting edge. And obviously it's a quinine derivative. And on my 17th birthday, I had an allergic reaction to them. And it gave me a heart block incident that gave me a near-death experience on my 17th birthday. So that was fun. I got through that. And the doctors are telling me now, my rhythm was so bizarre. It was just like really, they couldn't get the rhythm back to being normal again. And I was dating a nurse who couldn't put her head on my chest because of how incredibly uneven my heartbeat was. And now I'm being told that I'll be lucky if I get out of my 20s. But I had made up my mind that none of that was going to matter to me. I was just going to live my life. I was going to have the most fun possible for a human being to have. I started doing what I called chasing life with a hammer. And, I went to college, even though I was told I wouldn't actually probably live through graduation. I started a television career. I just kept doing all these things. Every time I thought something that was the doctors thought I shouldn't do, that's exactly what I did do. And I just kind of bullied my heart into getting well. And then when I was at the end of being 35, my doctor said to me, I went in for a checkup, and he goes, "Stephen, I don't know what you did." He says, "but your EKG is indistinguishable from a normal person's." He goes, "You beat it. Go out and live." That's what he told me. So on my 34th birthday, which was the 17th anniversary of me almost dying on my birthday, I bought a glider, and that was my celebration. And I had become a glider pilot by now, and so I bought my own glider, and or sailplane is the real word for it. And I was just having a great time. So that's really basically how I beat it. And then let me ask you, Odd, have you ever had it in your life where everything is going perfect? You're doing great. Can you hear my dog barking in the background? No. Oh, that's good to hear. Everything is going great and you just ruin it. You ever do that?
I don't know if necessarily I'm ruining it. I get super suspicious when things go too well for too long, and maybe through my own energy I screw things up. But yeah, I when things I grew up poor. I've had all these trials and tribulations in my life. I understand struggle better than success. And so when things go well for too long, I'm like, hey, where's that other shoe? I'm waiting.
Exactly. Well, everything was going great for me. I was a television director. I had my own production business. I had an airplane. I had a trailer at the airport, all this stuff. And so I got married. So that's
you screwed it up.
I screwed it up. Now I don't have an airplane anymore or a trailer, but I do have a devoted wife who stayed with me through thick and thin. And
priceless.
Yeah, that is priceless. Actually, it's worth more than that stuff. But we were married about 10 years, and then things started to change. And I couldn't understand why I was gaining weight. I couldn't understand why I was slowing down. We checked my heart. I wore a heart monitor. Nothing seemed to tell us what it was until I was walking with my friend Larry in the hills of my neighborhood, and I collapsed on him, and he had to drag me home. I scared the heck out of my friend Larry, who has passed a few years ago from cancer, but scared Larry to death, scared me to death. I called my doctor. The next day I had a stress test, and I collapsed on the stress test after 30 seconds. And they discovered that, once again, I had a grossly enlarged heart, and that I was in complete heart failure. And I had maybe a year to live. And that's when I had to. So that's what happened to get my first transplant. And it was because I had caught a virus. It had nothing to do with the previous troubles. I had caught a virus that had attacked my heart and killed it. Isn't that interesting? So it's not an uncommon thing for people to lose their hearts to a virus.
Now, was it the fact that the virus in and of itself normally attacks the heart, or was it because your heart was, how when you, I don't know if you've ever like worked on cars or anything like that, but you put an aftermarket part on a car, it tends to fail quicker than the rest of the car.
Mm-hmm. No, this was because I just caught a virus. It's a common thing to have happen. And I mean, it's like, that whole thing about God is playing to an audience that's too scared to laugh. I got to tell you, I thought that was funny. No, really. But I mean, seriously, I'm like, really, God, that's really funny, but really?
Yeah. I got to ask you, like, you've pretty much lived a good chunk of your life with an expiration date. What is that like?
It's like, you don't tell anybody. The only person who really knew were my doctor and my mother.
Yeah, but me. You knew.
I knew. But I went into I'm going to live my life to the fullest mode. And that's where I kept it. My very best friend at the time, Joe, I wouldn't tell him. I wouldn't tell any of my friends. I wouldn't tell any girlfriends, because I didn't want that look in their eye that made me where they were like, oh my God, Stephen's going to die soon. I didn't want that. I wanted them to just enjoy me and me to enjoy them and what we were doing together. That's what I wanted.
And you don't want the pity or to be treated differently because of it.
That would have weakened me. That would have made me, I needed my foundation to be really strong. And that was my foundation, this belief. I had this belief that I was going to beat it, and I couldn't have anybody else weakening it, And so that's what I did. That's how I did it. And I just ignored what the doctor said, And I didn't say, I wasn't trying to be like a bad patient, but I just ignored that fact.
Well, you kind of have to, because like you said, otherwise you're scared to do anything.
Right.
If you were just going to roll over and accept the fate that had been handed to you, you wouldn't have learned to fly planes. You wouldn't have taken the career in TV. You wouldn't have done any of the things that you ended up doing.
Exactly. And that was the whole point. I ended up doing all this really terrific stuff because I refuse to be afraid. The Bible says he who loves his life shall lose it. And I think that and that's a meaning where you love life more than you love God is really what the Bible means. But I think there's a second meaning to that. I think it means that if you're so afraid to live your life, If you're so afraid that you could do something that's going to make you die, right? If you live in a closet, if you live in your house because you're afraid, you've lost your life anyway. So I took that phrase and modified it for myself, and I refused to be afraid.
All right. So picking back up where the story was, you've caught a virus. You have a big heart again, which, doesn't sound like it would be that bad. A lot of us have big hearts, but in your case, an enlarged heart means yet again, time to go back to the doctors and possibly go under the knife. So what happened?
Well, just so you know, when you get an enlarged heart, your heart is like this, right? But when it enlarges, it gets like this. The walls get really thin. And there's no pumping it. The heart can't pump because the walls are so thin from being expanded. Mm-hmm. That's why it's a bad thing. Anyway, so I had the heart transplant, and that went really well. It took a year. We got right up to Rose and I both. Rose is my wife. Rose and I both thought I wouldn't get the heart in time. I got it literally within 2 weeks of it being too late. And I sailed through the operation. I sailed through the recovery. I was out of the hospital in 14 days. I mean, I did really well. And then I was making the trailer for my book. We were outside. It was a cold day. It was in April. It was April 26th, my birthday again. So remember, the day I was born, I had my first 3 operations. I had my out-of-body experience. I almost died on my 17th birthday. And now it's my 61st birthday or my 60th birthday, and I'm writing the book, and I'm doing the trailer, and all of a sudden I'm shivering. My lips turned gray. The girl who was helping us came up to me. She goes, "I don't like the way you look," and I didn't like the way I felt. We went to that was a Friday. I went to the hospital on Monday to see my doctor. And she was freaked when she saw me, and she listened to my heart. And next thing I know, I'm in the hospital. She said, "You had a massive heart attack." But because my heart is not mine, and the nerves weren't connected, because, they cut out your heart, put in a new one. They don't reconnect nerves. Because I didn't know I had a heart attack. I didn't feel it because I had no feelings about that with my heart. So I was really lucky to survive this heart attack. And it was brought on by rejection. So I rejected that heart after 14 years. And that was 15 by the time I changed it. I changed my heart. I guess we'll go back to the car parts analogy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, it works, though. I mean, look, I look at humans as organic machines. We are nothing more than organic computers or organic machines. We have the same processes that computers do. A lot of our organs and stuff are very much similar to how machines operate, specifically cars. And thanks to medical science, we were able to swap out a carburetor every now and then.
Mm-hmm, exactly. I mean, you ever think about it? A camera is almost an exact replica of an eye.
Yeah.
It really is. It's so, you're right. I couldn't agree with what you just said more. So I got that heart, but I had to move to LA because I lived in New York at the time. I now live in Tennessee. I lived in New York at the time, and New York is number 50 out of 50 for donation. It's the worst state in the country for donation. Yeah. And you wouldn't think that, would you?
With the number of people that are in New York and the possibility of any percentage of those people needing any kind of organ donation, no, the math kind of checks out.
No, the math should be that there's more donation with all that population. There's less donation with all that population.
I've never been to New York. I've never lived in New York, but I'm pretty sure they're a bit selfish.
That would exactly be what my point is. And so I had to move to California to get my heart because I wouldn't have survived the waiting time in New York. And I got my heart in California. It was a horrific operation. It was my 4th open heart operation. And it was horrific. It took me 2.5 years to recover from it. But I was on the table for 15 hours. They had me open for 3 days. They had me open for 3 days because they couldn't find a bleeder. They could run me back into the OR, drain the blood, and try to find it. And it took them 3 days to find the bleeder. Meantime, I'm open. I have those clear plastic bandages called Tegaderms. Mm-hmm. I had a huge one across my chest. I actually have burn marks from them ripping them on and off. And yeah, parts of my chest here look like I had burns, and it's from the Tegader. My wife could look into my chest and see my new heart, and I had so much swelling that they couldn't close me, and it was time to close me because they'd been messing around there so long. They said it was like trying to pack an overstuffed suitcase. I love these kind of images the doctors give you.
Yeah, they won't tell you exactly what's going on. They'll use fancy words, but then they come up with overstuffed suitcase as a terminology.
Yes. I got to tell you a hysterical thing. They told me that I was in end-stage heart failure. Oops, I banged my mic. They told me I was in end-stage heart failure. And my wife is a nurse. And I'm saying to my wife, so what's end stage? She goes, it's end. And I go, what does N mean? And she goes, what do you? She goes, what do you think it means? And I kept going. Finally, I said to my wife one day, I go, what does N? Then what does that letter stand for? And she goes, not N, end, E-N-D. I was going crazy trying to figure out what end stage heart failure was.
Buddy.
Every doctor pronounces it like an N. Everybody, the nurses, the doctors, they all say end stage, not end. They leave the D off. But I just thought that was kind of funny. But now I have this. I have David Jason Jacobo is living right here, and when he passed, he became a mega donor. He did way more than just the normal 8 organs. He did tissue and all sorts of other things. So a lot of people are carrying his legacy. His mother, Susan Jacobo, was the one who gave permission, and his father, I'm sure too. His father was also named David, because of their generosity. I mean, their son walked in the house. He had just gotten divorced, so he was living with his parents, and he walked into the house, and his sister, his father, and his mother were there, and he collapsed from a brain aneurysm right in front of them. And that's got to be the worst day of any parent's life. And through all that suffering and pain and heartache, Susan and her husband David have the grace to say, no, he would have wanted to be a donor. Please let him be a donor. And they saved more than 8 lives, Well, so
I know part of your book is talking about speaking with the donor families. Now that's not normal, is it? Like, it's my understanding is that the donor family and the recipient usually don't have contact.
No, well, if you're any kind of recipient, if you don't write your letter, I'm going to be mad at you, because you at least need to thank them for the gift. But only 3% of donor families respond to the letters, only 3%. And less than that, probably somewhere in the high 1%, almost to 2%, is they get to meet. So it's very rare, and I got to meet them. I wrote them several letters. It took them several years to respond. I just thought, like my first donor, they weren't going to respond. I knew that was normal. And, to me, it was like, well, if that's what they want, that's what they deserve, whatever they want,
There's an etiquette with heart recipient or donors and whatnot. Like, you're supposed to write a letter. I didn't know that.
Well, sure. I mean, if somebody gives you a gift, don't you write a thank you letter? So, I used to be the vice president of Transplant Speakers International. We were a pretty good sized charity. I've spoken to thousands of donor families. And I can't tell you the heartbreak when they say, the guy who got the heart never thanked us, or the guy who got the kidneys, somebody never thanked them. And they don't want to talk to you necessarily, but they want to know that you're grateful. I mean, you just saved their lives. The least thing you could do is write a letter.
That's fair.
So I wrote my letter on the second or third day I got home from the hospital in LA. We had an apartment, and I wrote it then. And you write it, and it goes to the OPO, the Organ Procurement Organization. You're not allowed direct contact. You're not allowed to say your name. You could say your first name if you want, but you can't say your last name. You can't even hint about where you live. You have to give no kind of identifying information. All you're doing is writing a thank you. I wrote that thank you, and then I wrote them a letter for Christmas. I am not sure, remember if I wrote them 2 or 3 letters, probably 3. And it took them 2 years to respond to me, but then they did. It was too heartbreaking for them to do it.
No, understandable.
Yeah, really. And that's why if they hadn't responded, it would have been fine with me. I just wanted them to know I was grateful. And after that point, I wasn't going to write any more letters because I didn't want to badger them. You know, I didn't want them to think I was forcing them to respond, you know, but they did respond with a handwritten letter from the mother. It was beautiful handwriting. I mean, really beautiful handwriting. And I remember getting that letter and holding it to my chest and going, David, this is your mother. Your mother loves you. She misses you. And just holding her handwriting to my chest so that I can make a connection between her and David again, you know.
You know, last week you and I we did the pre-interview chat, and we were on the phone for almost 2 hours with each other. I had intended to be a 15-minute phone call, but we hit it off, and we see the world for the most part the same way. And what struck me is, as I was prepping for the interview and thinking about this, is, you know, we do everything we can to try to disconnect ourselves from each other. You know, like we keep to ourselves. We find reasons to not want to talk to that person, or to not association with this person. And realistically, we are all connected. We are all together. And that's never more evident than in a donor type situation, you know, because you are literally living with someone else inside your body, essentially.
Yes. And
there is an attitude that you have to accept, I would think, at that point, one of gratitude, and basically, you know, getting over yourself in a sense. You know, you're not as important as you think you are when you're walking around with a part from somebody else inside of you. There's something more there, right?
Yeah, no, that's 100% right. And you know, in a weird way, they're keeping, well, it's not a weird, but they're keeping you alive, but you're also keeping them alive. It's a really odd, pardon the pun, it's an odd symbiosis going on there. And I mean, I'm aware of it every day. I mean, you know, I'm grateful every single day, and grateful is one of my favorite things, as you know. I mean, the name of my book is Grateful Guilt. To live your life in an attitude of gratitude sounds trite, but it is, to me, absolutely the key to a happy life. It is the key to success in life, to everything. You know, how many times has something happened to you and you were cursing it and you were really upset about it, and a year later you realize that was the best thing that could have happened, that thing that you thought was bad. And that's why, you know, it says, it's, again, I'm going back to the Bible. I'm not like a deeply religious person in the normal sense. I don't go to church or anything, but I do really believe in God. And but being grateful in all things is the key. You have to be grateful for the bad, and you have to be grateful for the good. If you're only grateful for the good, there's nothing to it. But if you can be grateful for the bad, now you're really pulling off a trick, you know?
Well, and that's not even necessarily, you know, a religious thing. It's just solid advice in general. You know, I suffer from depression and anxiety myself, and there are days where it is hard to see good in not only myself but the world in general. And so I have to work harder those days. And there are days where I will force myself to think of 5 things that I'm grateful for. They don't have to be big things, you know, right. They can literally be anything. Hey, I'm grateful for bacon today, you know. It's silly little stuff like that, but it does often help the mindset. And we had talked about this in the pre-interview, but it's something that I mention a lot is, you know, we tend to focus, we're hardwired to focus on the bad. We're hardwired to pay attention to the bad instances in our lives because we learn more from the bad than we do necessarily from the good. Fire right. is hot. You can be told fire is hot all day long, but until you touch that flame, you know, there's the bad. I got burned. I'm bad. That was bad. I don't want to do that again. my brain now hardwires fire is hot, don't touch it, you'll get burned.
Right.
And so I think it's an instinct thing that we have to overcome as a society, is to focus more on the good. There is a lot of good out there. The problem is the bad is louder a lot of the times than the good.
Yes. Yeah, you're 100% right. You're absolutely right. I mean, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've been in a hospital and you hear people screaming at doctors and nurses. I mean, screaming at them. When I went to Cedars to get my heart, for the second transplant, there was a woman who was acting up so much. There were 5 security people in her room. 5 security people. Now,
in a hospital room.
In a hospital room, right? And she was going berserk. I mean, you wouldn't believe the screaming and the cursing and the yell. Oh my gosh! But you know, and I've heard multiple times in hospitals, people go, "Do you know who I am?" And these kind of things where they try to bully people like they do in business or in life. And I hate to tell you this, but hospitals is exactly the wrong place to act like that. If you want to survive a hospital, first of all, being grateful. I mean, people like, I can't tell you how many people, I mean, I've been sick my whole life. I mean, I listen to people and they get a little tiny thing and it's like, they're all over Facebook. Oh, woe is me, you know? And I'm like, oh my God, pull yourself together.
I woke up with the sniffles today. Thoughts and prayers, people. Thoughts and prayers.
Exactly. I banged my thumb. Oh, you know, and they show pictures of it, you know, but people, like I've heard people in hospitals going, woe is me, and why does this happen to me, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm wishing doctors would get educated in this, because they have a lot of power here. And they could say to the person, well, woe is you, but you know, look where you are. You're in a modern hospital. You're getting modern health care. You're in a comfortable bed. You're in a room that's air conditioned or heated. You have blankets. You have a roof. You don't have to worry about the rain. You're getting fed. You know, people are visiting you. You've got clothing. You got medicine. There's like, you could go down a list of things for them to be immediately grateful for, and maybe you could change their mind.
Well, you also got to realize too that we as society are terrified of being vulnerable, and a lot of the times, you know, those people, there are probably not moments in their lives where they're used to being vulnerable, so they don't like it very much. So
No,
when
they
you're
don't.
stuck in a hospital bed getting poked and prodded and looked at and have very little control over what's about to happen to you, whether you survive or not, you know, that triggers all those fear and anxieties and everything else, and they act out. We need to be okay with vulnerability. We need to humble ourselves quite a bit, I think. And being in the hospital when you're that sick, to be in the hospital, that's a very humbling experience, and a lot of people don't handle it well.
It's okay to get help. It's basically what we're saying, I think, both of us. Would you agree? It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to receive help. You know?
Too bad this country has brainwashed us into thinking that that's the worst thing possible.
I know. And actually, it's the thing that builds everything. Everybody helping each other is what builds everything, isn't it?
Now, there's a quote here from you that I like. It says, "I can't do battle and cry at the same time. It's impossible."
Right. Yes. That was like when I first told that that my heart was dying and I was going to need an operation again, and that the whole thing was going to start all over again. All the poking and the prodding and the cutting and the pain was all going to start again. And so what happened is I allowed myself to cry literally 5-10 minutes, and that was it. And it was done. When I gotten that out of myself, then I was like, okay, now it's time to armor up. Now it's time to do battle. And you can't be a warrior who has tears in their eyes. You can't see the battlefield well with tears in your eyes. So you just have to armor up. You have to stand up, and you have to face what it is that you have to face, and face it head on, and make it an equal of yours or less of an equal of yours, so that you can fight it, you know, and say, okay, cancer, okay, heart problems, okay, whatever, you know, here I am. Let's go at it, you know, and take it on, and just take it on. And you can be amazed how the more you do that, and the stronger you get, you know.
Admittedly, that's an issue that I have. I don't allow myself to cry very often. I don't allow myself to feel sadness more than anything. Honestly, it's anger or neutral a lot of the times in my head. You know, I'm either pissed off at the world or indifferent to it. The last time, and I the reason I'm saying this is I'm getting to the point is the last time that I took those 5-10 minutes, it was after my mom died. I was in total shock, and I am the older brother, so it was put on the armor. Let's deal with whatever's coming down the pike at us right now. You know, try to make things as easy and as simple as possible for my younger brother, and we'll take time to feel it later. And it was probably about a day or two, and then I came home, and I don't know what it was, but I came home, I walked through the threshold of the door, I shut the door, and I collapsed crying. Like, I was perfectly fine until the minute I crossed that threshold and that door closed behind me. And I collapsed to the ground and just bawled my eyes out for a good 5 or 10 minutes. And I remember feeling sad and scared and angry and confused. And then my wife came out of the kitchen and my brother came out of his bedroom, and they came at me and they wrapped their arms around me. And I remember feeling so much more anger that they saw me crying. You know, that I knew they were in the house. I knew where they were. And I was more mad at myself that I couldn't keep it together, that I let them see me cry. And I realized after the fact of how stupid a mindset that is. Like, these are the two people that they're all I got now, honestly. Right. You know, when it comes to our family unit, that's it. It's my brother and my wife. And it's been something that has been a challenge for me my whole life. And mom dying kind of made me have to reevaluate my stance on those things. And I'm still working on it. It's only been 2 years, and it's still something I go back and forth with, because as progressive as I am, I still have that old mindset of a man is supposed to be blah, 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 you know? And, but I agree. It's important to give yourself that time to grieve, whether it's grieving someone you've lost, grieving the situation that you're in, but you can't dwell on it.
No, you can't. But, you know, to your point about being a man, because I was raised that way too. I mean, my father was a Golden Gloves. My father was a third runner-up for Mr. Universe when he was a young man. My father was in the Army. He killed people in hand-to-hand combat. I mean, my father was like a man's man, you know? And I only saw him cry twice in my life. Twice in my whole life, I saw my father cry. And he was really that way, you know? But I have learned for myself, and I'm not saying this for everybody, but what I have learned for myself is that a man understands that he's a man, or a woman understands that they're a woman. But going back to this thing about being a man, but being a man means you're all these things. It's not just one thing. It's not just one, you're not one dimensional. And it's okay. It's like I said, you can't fight a battle with tears. Okay, but you can set aside a little time for those tears and then be done with them and then go into battle. And when you learn that balance, you can be much happier, I think.
Yeah, life decided to kick me right in the nards and said, you're going to cry right now, whether you want to or not.
Right.
And that's usually what ends up happening is you try to hold on to it for too long and the levee breaks.
Right. And then, and in the meantime, you're building pressure inside yourself. It's not healthy for you. You know, you're causing tension for your heart and for your nervous system. None of that is really healthy. And I do that too. I like to pent it up. I really do. I have learned not to be that way as much anymore, and I'm much happier for it. I have to say, leaving New York and moving to Tennessee, where everything is much nicer, the people are kinder pace. has been a huge improvement for both me and my wife. We both see it because, because New York is a pressure cooker. Mm-hmm. And you're in that pressure cooker, whether you want to be or not. Every time you go on the street, every time you drive your car, people are honking at you. They're flipping you the bird. I mean, that doesn't happen down here. And so some of it is the environment we put ourselves in too, I think.
All right. One of your pieces of advice here is to be your own advocate. Can you expand upon that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you're, no matter who you have as a spouse or whatever, attorney, whatever, I don't care what you're going to say. When you're in a hospital, when things are being done to you, it's just you and them. Nobody's with you. So you have to watch out for things. So, I have learned that, like one time, just as a quick example, a doctor was going to give me a shot, which is unusual. And so he swabbed my arm. And then he started to put the needle in the place where he didn't swab. And that's a bad thing. And I said to him, "Excuse me, doctor, do you mind swabbing that part of my arm?" And he went, "Oh," and he was more than happy to do it. You have to look out. You have to look out for you in a hospital because nobody else is there to do it. There are things you can do to make things in a hospital go better. One of the ways that my number one secret is, if you have to go into hospital, make sure that your room is the room everybody wants to go into. So if you're the guy yelling, "Do you know who I am?" Do they want to go into that room? No. But if you're the guy who's saying thank you to everybody, and you're talking to them and asking them about their families, and you're being as friendly as you can, well, which patient on the floor do they want to help the most? I make sure that my room is the room they want to go into.
Well, you also say here a sense of humor is and the use of humor has actually saved lives, and you're correct.
Yes.
In that exact situation is, if they look, medical industry, like the medical personnel, yes, they are there to save you and to take care of you and to make sure that you don't die, and to the best of their level. But having worked in a hospital myself, I can tell you firsthand that there are some patients that we're not that upset if they're in pain for a little bit longer, and it's shitty. I get that, but it's human nature, unfortunately, and the patients that behave like, they're throwing bedpans and, "Do you know who I am? And I'll sue this hospital. I'll take you for everything that you've got," blah, 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 calling them stupid or whatever other names that they can come up with. Yeah. Your next dose for your pain meds is at 3:00, but you might not get it till 3:30 because, you're not someone they really want to make sure is okay at that moment. You'll get it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, you'll get it.
Yeah.
But they're not doing everything for you that they could.
Right.
Whereas
as opposed to
if they like you and they want to be in your room, they do I can't tell you the things that I actually had nurses come into my room late at night to talk to me about their boyfriends and to talk to me about their lives. And, male nurses are talking about their new M1 and, the BMW and it's just, if you're that friendly with them, and I mean every person who walks into your room, you're that way with it. No person is better than another was one thing I really believe, right? So if the guy who's doing the janitorial work, to me, he's no better than the doctor is no better than him, right? And they're both equally human beings. And if you tell the guy who's cleaning your room, "Thank you so much for being part of my team that's helping save my life by cleaning my room like this. You're protecting me from infection, and I really appreciate what you do. Thank you." I did that with a guy, and I was thanking him for being part of the team that's saving my life. He stood 3 inches taller after I said that to him. Mm-hmm. And you want to know something? After that, I had the cleanest room in the hospital. So, so I made him happy. I made things better for myself. He had some pride that he's never given, that he deserves to have, Every person who walks into your room, you got to treat them like gold. Everyone.
Well, especially in the medical industry, because it is a very thankless job to have, despite what everyone else might think. I urge any of you that are listening to this right now, of all the times that you've been at the doctor's office or a hospital or anything else, I want you to think back to the last time you thanked one of them. I bet you're going to not be able to pull up a memory of the last time you thanked somebody. Maybe you will. Maybe you are a decent person. Maybe you are that type that makes that conscious effort. But I'm going to assume a lot of people don't.
And another real, if to advocate for yourself, is wear street clothes in the hospital. So I always wore a button-down shirt and sweats. Now they can get you in and out of that as fast as they can a gown, because a gown, actually they have to pick you up, they have to untie it. So with a button-down shirt, it's actually easier. And wear a button-down shirt with a pocket, because if you have to have a monitor, you have a place to put the monitor, and it's not hanging off your neck anymore and hurting your neck. But the thing is, if you're wearing a button-down shirt and sweatpants, you're not in a gown. And now you've separated yourself from the other patients in the room, in the hospital. And sometimes, like in New York, that you can have 4 people in the same room. So much for HIPAA. But anyway, and the doctors don't see a gown. They see a person in street clothes. And it pulls a switch in their brain, because now suddenly you're not just another piece of medical meat with a gown. You're somebody who's in a button-down shirt, and they're going to treat you differently. And my wife told me that she noticed that the people in cancer do that some people would wear street clothes. And she said they always got treated differently. And I had a doctor tell me that he said, I actually want to do a study on what you're doing, because there's no doubt about it. People who wear street clothes in hospital get treated differently. So that's another good thing to do to advocate for yourself.
Well, okay, so we've talked about your heart and the transplants. How's your health now?
No, it's good. My weight is during COVID. I was gaining all this weight, partly because I was so sick for 2.5 years. But I had no idea what to eat and everything. I was doing everything wrong. I finally did my research. During COVID, I lost 34 pounds. I started exercising an hour a day. And my health is really the best it's been, pretty much, except for the fact that I'm getting old,
well,
which I'm really grateful for.
Yes. Yeah. In your case, especially, getting old was not necessarily a option in the beginning.
I went to my 30th school year. What it was, my 20th school reunion, and literally people went, "You're alive." So, I'm doing okay. Everything is good.
You mentioned a career in TV. What did you do?
I had my own, I was a freelancer. I called it, I had my own production company, but I worked as a director, mostly as a director of photography and as a cameraman, and as a lighting director. Most of the jobs I did involved lighting. I was either the lighting director or I was the director of photography. The director of photography is more like a film kind of thing, where you do the lighting and the camera work. And lighting director is more a television thing than theater or anything. Well, theater does lighting directors too, but where you do all the lighting, but you don't do any of the camera work.
So I would imagine that was kind of a high stress, high impact on your heart career field, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I couldn't wait till the weekends to get in my glider and be 6,000 feet above the ground with just me as a single seat plane. I wouldn't even bring the headset for my radio because I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just turned off, So yeah, it was very high stress. But I also loved it. I enjoyed lighting. I enjoyed directing. I enjoyed all of it. I wrote too. I did everything you could do, pretty much.
So what do you do now to keep busy?
Well, right now we just bought. We have a property here that's 3.5 acres with a little more than 3.5 acres. We have a lot of trees and and things that need to be taken care of. Right now, because we just moved, I'm taking care of things on the property. I'm getting ready to do my next step. I'm not sure where I'm going to go exactly. I'm sure I'm going to write again. I've been writing all my life. So I'm sure there's something else that's going to come out of me that way. But I'm working with, one of the things I'm doing now is I haven't stopped doing. I should have even thought of this right at first. Is I really into the patient experience thing in hospitals. I talk to doctors and I talk to patient groups about how to conduct yourselves in a hospital so that doctors so they get an idea of what's best for the patients, and patients so they get an idea of how to get the doctors to be best for them. So I do that all the time.
You're also a big advocate for organ donation.
Of course, yeah. Since I've had 2 donor hearts, yeah.
Makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah, I mean that's why when I first got out of my first transplant, I was out my 2 or 3 months when transplant speakers tapped me to come in. They wanted me to become involved, and I was on the board of directors immediately. And probably a year later, I was vice president. A couple of years later, I was vice president. And we were in England. I got us into England. Me and Frank got us into England. And we're in Canada and all over the United States. So there are 59 OPOs in the country. It's an organ procurement organization. That's where you get listed to get your organ. 56 of them were our clients. So, wow. Yeah, we were pretty good then at that. So I did that for I don't know, I'd say 13 years, 12 or 13 years with them. And now I'm on the executive board of an organization called TRIO. It's a national organization. I'm on the board, and I'm the secretary of the New York chapter, Long Island chapter, I should say. So I'm still very active in that.
Well, I know you had asked, and I will make sure that all the links that everybody needs to not only purchase your book, but to find out more information about how to become a donor or just the donor program in a general will be added with this interview.
And don't forget the audiobook.
Yeah. Everything Stephen Taibbi and organ donation will be provided.
Organ donation is just, I mean, what are you doing with it when you die? What are you going to do with it, right? I mean, shouldn't it be passed on to help somebody else instead of getting buried or burned?
Yeah, if it can be. I mean, my goal for after I die is to be cremated. So if they want to yank some parts out of me and pass them on to somebody else, by all means, have at it.
Me, I want to go into the grave as an empty cannoli shell, I want them to take everything they can take.
I don't know. I've had the idea to be cremated for a good chunk of my life because I didn't want to take up space in death. I'd rather just be put on a shelf and people can come by and wave at me every so often if they want. But I don't know. I don't like cemeteries. I don't like graveyards and stuff myself. So I don't want to force anybody else to have to come to one to see me.
That's okay. I mean, my dad is on my shelf, and but my mother is in a grave. That's what they both wanted. I don't know. I don't think it really matters, to be honest with you, because the part of you that's you is not there. So the part of you that's you, that goes someplace. But the part that's on the shelf or the part that's in the grave, that's a nothing. My mother actually gave us a copy of a poem about that. Don't visit me. I'm not here. I'm more in your thoughts than I am in that plot of land. And that's true,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I talk to my mom regularly, whether vocally or in my head, she's sitting on the shelf just over there. And, I don't know. I felt that way myself. Is like, I've never felt that those people are in the ground. You're basically talking to blades of grass at that point,
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so we made it through almost everything that I have here. So we've only got 2 parts left, and one of them is coming up. Hey, Stephen, tell me a story
tell you a story. I don't know why this just jumped into my mind. I was flying a glider, not mine. I didn't own a glider at this point. I was flying a glider over the beautiful hills of New Jersey. And there was this guy. At the time, I was in my late 30s. I was probably 39 or 40, something like that. And there was this guy who was probably my age now, maybe a little older. He was in his 70s. I'm in my late 60s. And he was one of those kind of pilots who always thought that he was Chuck Yeager, but he had the abilities of, a child. And he, you could just imagine that he's in his glider, going, da, 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 like as if he's a fighter pilot or something, I could say this, I'm not going to say his name. The guy was a moron. And I couldn't stand this guy anyway. And he decided to dive on me. He dove on me. And I was dating this girl, Susan, at the time, and she was a student pilot. And she looks up and she goes to everybody. She goes, "Oh my God, Stephen's going to die." And they all looked, and everybody on the ground thought I was going to die. And this guy's diving on me. I'm in a sailplane. You do thermal turns. You make circles so that you can go up with the rising currents of hot air. Right. So I was in a thermal turn, and fortunately, my head is on a swivel, and I'm always looking for something. And I see moron coming right at me. So I see that there's no way we're not going to hit. And it's a glider. It's not like you can use your engine and move. So I just did some calculations in my head, and I said, okay, if I stay in this turn, he's definitely going to hit me. So I leveled the wings. And as I leveled the wings, he went past me. He was inboard my wing by a good 4 feet, and he missed my wing by that much. Maybe, by about that much. We just missed. He just went 4 feet into my wing, and he's like 12, maybe 16 inches above my wing as he goes. Now that's as close as you want to get.
So dude's up there pretending he's Snoopy in a dogfight on top of his doghouse.
Right. So I was so infuriated that I had to stay up there and just fly for a while, because I had to calm down. I was just so angry. But when I landed, and everybody saw what happened, and when I landed, I was going to beat the crap out of him. I was literally going to beat the crap out of him. I wanted to beat him unconscious. I wanted to almost kill this ass. He almost killed me. Literally, he almost killed me. Everybody had to hold me back. I mean, people were like, "No, Stephen," and the FAA, one of the people down there was an FAA representative. And I was hoping he was going to pull his license, but he only gave him a warning. So I never felt like I got justice for that. To this day, I still want to beat him.
How the hell did they only give him a warning? He directly endangered another pilot.
That's what I said. And the guy was like, "Look, he's an asshole." That's what I'm sorry. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Well, I can say it. Can I say it here?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't fucking care.
Okay, good. The guy goes, "He's an asshole. He's always going to be an asshole. I gave him a warning that if he does anything, the slightest thing, he loses his license." So I was a little bit mollified with that, but I don't know. When you said, "Tell me a story," that story was in my head the other night. I was thinking about how close that was.
And pissed off all over again about it.
Yes. But seriously, when you see a wing go over your wing, like 4 feet inboard your wing, that's
only imagine. Flying is something I always thought would be cool to learn, but I grew up poor, live poor. It's not necessarily something that's in my budget. Plus, I'm a bigger dude too, so I'm conscious of weight restrictions.
You can still fly a glider, but it's really it's a very liberating thing to do. I haven't flown in a long time. Once I got sick, I stopped flying. But I used to adore flying. I used to spend 3 to 4 days a week at my airport. I had my trailer. I had the camper, and I would just stay there. and if I had a job in New Jersey, I'd stay at my camper, and this way I'd save my commute.
Mhm.
So, but for those years that I was flying, that was a really special time that I really love, and the fact that my doctor had told me he wouldn't allow me to fly, and I got to be a pilot anyway, is one of those things where I persevered over the doctors.
Well, I want to thank you for that story. We've come to the point where almost everybody in my interviews dreads because they don't know what's coming next. We've hit the point of interview roulette. At the beginning of the interview, I had you pick 5 random numbers, 1 to 250. These are the questions that correspond to them. Are you ready?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
First question. What is something you don't mind paying more money for?
Dinner.
Yeah. If you're going out to eat, what's your cuisine of choice?
Well, Italian, but that's not, Tennessee doesn't have much Italian. So now that I'm here, there's semi-Italian here, which is probably what I still would go with.
If you could sing a duet with anyone, who would it be?
My mother.
Did she sing, or is it just
my mother sounded like Ella Fitzgerald for real. She was phenomenal. Wow. She was phenomenal, and I haven't heard her voice in quite a long time. So that would probably be who I'd want to do it with.
Now, being in the entertainment industry, to the capacity that you were, do you sing?
Oh, I croak.
Twice, it sounded like.
Yeah, right.
All right. At what age did you read your first comic book?
Oh, Lord, probably 4 or 5.
Do you remember what it was?
So Lancelot.
King Arthur tales.
Yeah.
Do you still read comics?
No.
Because I know you're an avid reader.
Yeah, I'm an avid reader. I read about 4 or 5 books a month.
Do you just grow out of comic books, or?
Yeah, I grew out of comic books when I was like 13, 14.
Well, that sounds terrible, sir. I hope it never happens to me.
Fate worse than death.
Yeah. Well, I like a lot of sure, you can go superheroes and stuff like that, but I like a lot of the independent comics that came out, and, because they deal with different issues and stuff like that. And, there's a few of them that are just really solid stories, despite the fact that they are comic books,
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, I hope that's something that never is an affliction I never have to deal with. I don't want to grow out of comic books.
Well, I know the comics that they have today are way different than the ones they had but I never kept up with them, so I have no idea about anything. So,
Are there any funny stories your family tells about you that come to mind?
Yes. When I'm the only natural born child to my parents. I have 3 siblings. They're all adopted. My parents didn't think they'd be able to have children. And they took me to the orphanage when they were going to pick up my sister. And my sister, the girl they had picked out and were going to adopt was a little black girl, right? And they brought me to the orphanage, and so I had to have been like 3. And then I see this. My sister is actually Eurasian. She's half Chinese, half English, and I saw this little girl over there, and I ran over to her, and I started going, "This is my sister. This is my sister." And they were like, "Okay, we'll take this one instead of the other one." And that's how we got my sister Naomi, because I picked her out.
Well, I'm sure growing up, I can send you back, right?
I picked you. I can send you.
It's like the parents. I brought you into this world. I can take you out. I kept the receipt.
That's a good one. I kept the receipt. I love that.
All right. And then finally, what's the best thing about your life?
That I'm grateful for everything.
I would agree. Yeah. I have to say that despite all the trials and tribulations that it seems like your life is thrown at you, call it God, call it universe, or just call it bad luck, you have come out of it, it seems, with a wonderful outlook and wonderful attitude towards life. Now, I'm sure that there are days where you want to kick everything in your path. We all have them, but
Yes.
it really does seem like you've found the secret to life.
And the secret to life is being grateful for all things. I'm everybody who's listening to me, try it. Give it a shot, but you have to really do it. And if you're grateful for everything, it changes something inside of you. It makes you healthier. It makes it easier for you to heal. It makes it easier for you to deal with other people. If there's a jerk on the road and he cuts you off, be grateful you're not in the mood he's in, or she's in, because they're angry and they're something and you're not. So good. Let them be them and you be you, and you be grateful that and maybe you say, geez, I hope their day gets a little better.
Yeah. And like I had said earlier on, is, there is a simple exercise that you at home can do in the morning when you wake up, instead of another day, think of 5 things that you're grateful for.
Absolutely.
They can be anything from the fact that the sun is shining when you woke up to the fact that you're about to go have coffee. Hell, that first pee in the morning, you could be grateful for. It's literally anything. Pick 5 things and do that for a month. Commit yourself to doing that for 30 days. And I guarantee you're going to see a different outlook. You're going to feel different after those 30 days. Because
I think that's a great exercise for people to do. I think that's a wonderful suggestion.
Till they get to the point where you're at, where you're just grateful every day.
Yeah, you just it becomes a habit. After 30 days, things become a habit. So everybody listen to Odd. He's got a really good suggestion for you there.
Don't let my wife hear that. She hates when people listen to me. She thinks I'm just going to get everybody in trouble, which, who knows? All right, Stephen, I want to thank you for joining me. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. Everybody else, you need to go pick up Grateful Guilt, Living in the Shadow of My Heart. It's available in audio version on Google Play, Kobo, Walmart, Scribd, Chirp, Apple, Nook, Audiobooks, HiBooks, and Libro FM. And you could also buy physical copies, I believe, through Amazon, correct?
Through Amazon, and what's Barnes and Noble has it, and although I hear they run out of it every once in a while, but you could absolutely get it on Amazon.
And if for some reason they wanted it autographed by you, I'm sure they can reach out to you, right?
Absolutely. Go to my website, gratefulguilt.com. You don't even have to put the www and just gratefulguilt.com, or go to my Facebook page, Stephen Taibbi, author, and tell me what you want. We can connect there. Most people connect with me on Facebook on Stephen Taibbi, author.
I'm there.
Yes, you are.
In fact, I followed your author page with my personal page and my 2 pages that I run. So yeah, Stephen, thank you again.
Oh, did we connect on LinkedIn yet?
I forgot.
Let's connect on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Okay.
But thank you again, man, for sitting down and talking with me.
Thank you so much. First of all, I really enjoy you, and this was a great show. So thank you very much.
I'm gonna blush. Stop it.